Hey team, so a couple of days ago I uploaded a video on how to shoot the Milky Way, how to shoot the stars. Yeah, I hope you managed to learn something from that. If you haven't seen the video, go check it out here. Once you got your photos of the stars, that's only half the process. The source really brings the meal together, so we're gonna jump into some editing and I'll show you how I edit my photos of the stars. This is kind of down to preference, so you might not like exactly how I do it, but you might take away some of the things and put your own spin, your own touch on it. Okay, so this is my completed photo. This is how it came out once I put a bit of an edit on it, and this is the photo prior to that editing. As you can see, it's not really all that punchy. It looks kind of flat, but you kind of get the idea. When I'm editing photos of the stars, what I want to bring out is kind of my vision of how the stars look or might have looked if we could see them in a lot more detail. So when I think of the sky, I think of it quite cold at night time, so I want a lot of blue throughout the sky, but as you can actually see in the raw, there's a lot more warmth in the center of the Milky Way, and so I really want to accentuate that and make that a lot warmer in my edit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get my white balance kind of to the place that I want it to be. You may or may not have shot it exactly how you wanted it when you originally did shoot the Milky Way, but you can always edit it like this after the fact. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and reset this photo, and I am going to start by cooling it down just a touch. We can adjust that a bit further later on. Okay, now we're going to need to bring out a lot of the detail, a lot of the contrast in this photo. So I'm going to start by boosting up the contrast a little bit here and lift up the highlights just to try and separate the highlights, which are the stars, from the shadows, which is all the space in between. I'm going to drop the shadows just a little bit, and then I will bring up my whites a fair way. As you can see, that really starts to make the stars pop. And now, once again, with the blacks, we want to drop them down just a touch. Now that we've done a bit of work on it, you can see it's still a little bit too warm and a little bit too purple for my liking. So I'm gonna bring that tint slider towards the green and drop the white balance to the blue side a little bit more, maybe something like that. Now, a good way to get your colors a lot more accurate and see what changes are actually being made is to boost up the saturation and vibrance in order for the colors to really show what they are. So I'll boost my saturation and vibrance up for this, and we can see we're still quite on the purple side now. So I'm going to bring it slightly towards the green, and I think that's pretty good. As far as white balance goes, I'll probably drop the vibrance and saturation back down a little bit because we don't want to overcook that too much. I want to add a little bit more detail just to make the stars pop out a little bit more. So I'm going to pull out the clarity just a little bit. Sorry, I'm going to add some clarity in there just a little bit, and a bit of dehaze as well. Now, as you can see, that's made the photo a little darker, so I'll adjust the exposure a little bit. Okay, now we want to accentuate the very middle part of this photo because that's where the Milky Way is going to be sitting, and so I'm going to make myself a radial filter here, and I'm going to make a radial filter that kind of runs along the same line as the Milky Way. Now I want that center to pop nicely, so I'm going to boost the exposure up just a fraction, as well as add a little bit of clarity and a little bit of dehaze. Maybe that was a bit too much there. These adjustments can actually make quite a big difference, so you want to add them sparingly. I love to see the detail and the pop in that Milky Way. As you can see, the Milky Way is a little bit warmer than the rest of the image, and I want to accentuate that part of it. I want to bring a bit of warmth and vibrance to that center part. So I'm just going to bring up the color temperature of that center part just a tiny bit, just say 2 parts. And then same with the saturation, maybe 5 or 6, somewhere around there. And that's not looking too bad. That's before and after, before and after. Now I'll go back to my previous edit and see how it differs. Now I'm actually kind of liking this edit and how it's going. I feel like it might be still on the purple side the tiniest bit, so I'm gonna pull that over. Now in terms of colors, another way you can make the Milky Way pop from the rest of the sky is by going down to your camera calibration. Now the calibration is a way of kind of separating the colors quite nicely, and you may have heard of the very popular teal and orange, and while I kind of despise that, I'm not a big fan of teal and orange for a lot of things. What I do sometimes like to do is using that teal and orange look to really separate the two color spectrums, all the cold colors to make them really quite cold, and all the warm colors to make them really quite warm. And then I can adjust the hues of those colors to make it look a bit more neutral and not so teal and orange. Okay, I'll show you how I mean. So I'm going to pull down the reds towards the orange here, and the green primary up a little bit, and the blue primary, this is the real teal and orange look one, up a bit as well. Maybe bring that out a bit more. Okay, so now as you see, it's really separated quite a lot. The blues are real tealy, and the yellows are looking, not too orangey, but a little bit too orangey for my liking. But it's separated nonetheless, it's made it pop out quite nicely. So now I'm gonna go up to my hue saturation luminance, and I'm gonna take those blues, those teals, and I'm gonna bring them more towards the purple side, which is going to take it away from teal and make it back to blue. Okay, and a little bit with the aqua as well. And now we'll go up to the orange, and we'll actually just play around with that, with the orange and reds, until we get a tone for the middle of the Milky Way, which we're pretty happy with. I might just boost the orange, red and yellow a little bit in terms of saturation, and maybe make them pop a bit in the luminance side of things. Okay, so now I'm pretty stoked with that. I actually think it's a mile nicer than my previous edit, so pretty happy with that. And then last thing, we'll go down to the sharpening. We want to maybe boost the sharpening up to about 50, and if you hold down Option and click Mask, it's going to show you what areas are sharpened. So I'm just going to pull it out until you can see that only the main stars are going to be actually sharpened and the rest will be left alone. That way we won't get too much unwanted noise in our photo. I hope this helped. I hope you were able to maybe pick up a few things from the way I've edited these photos. Now, while I'm pretty happy with this, if you zoom in, there's going to be quite a bit of noise because, I mean, we shot at a high ISO, it was nighttime, it's to be expected. And I do have a couple of tips for how to shoot in a way in which you can remove almost all of that noise and get a ridiculously clean photo. It's a lot more complex and it requires a bit of Photoshop, so I'm going to leave this for another tutorial. And if you want to take your Astro to the next level, then check out the video I'm going to be creating pretty soon. Hope you have a good day, stay safe.